But that doesn't mean I'm going to hold my tongue about what I think is wrong about the left. And I don't. And there's a
Mhm.
lot. Um, and old school liberal, I could give you so many examples. It's a very big part of the show where I'm talking about
Mhm.
the fact that people somehow think that wokeness is an extension of liberalism, when very often
Mhm.
it's the opposite of liberalism. Um, I mean, just like the Israel situation, uh,
Right.
the liberal position has always been a two-state solution. I still think
Mhm.
that's the solution. Well, that's not the position of the woke. They want from the river to the sea. So
Mm.
you can have that position, but don't tell me that's the liberal position.
Bill Maher is still dropping truth bombs on the left, and they absolutely can't stand it. Honestly, it feels like only a matter of time before Maher steps away from the left, moves toward the center, and maybe even drifts to the right. As expected, his own side has slammed him for constantly calling them out. But Maher isn't backing off. This time, he came in with some serious heat. Let's get into it.
If you're still brooding about the election, you're in the wrong building. I'm here just to make you laugh, and I'm not going to uh, pre-hate anything that hasn't happened
Mhm.
yet. And also look around. Are you really suffering that much? Now, Trump,
Mhm.
could he blow up the world on the second day? Yeah, he could. But until he does, I'm not going to chase every crazy thing he does, and I'm not going to
Mhm.
get upset about things that haven't happened yet.
Maher has repeatedly said he's not going to pre-hate anything, and he's sticking firmly to that principle. He refuses to join the outrage bandwagon before the facts are in a level of discipline that become rare in today's political climate. Maher has criticized President Trump for years, dating back to Trump's first days in office. But his criticism has always been grounded in Trump's actual behavior, not in hypothetical fears or emotional snap reactions. That's what sets him apart from so many in his own party. While plenty of Democrats jump to conclusions the moment Trump's name comes up, Maher insists on judging actions, not assumptions.
And when I look around, America is, it's a place with a lot of problems, but also compared to the rest of the world, it's doing better than most places. And a lot of people are just living their best lives.
Are you this way, period, or did it take you a little while to get to this point after the election?
I mean, I was ready for Trump to win. I thought that she would win. I thought that America always basically moves forward and not backward, but I was wrong. I was certainly not surprised because I did not think she was a great candidate.
And that Maher candid assessment one many Democrats still haven't fully accepted. It's easier for them to blame outside influences, misinformation, or uninformed voters than to confront the uncomfortable truth right in front of them. Harris, despite heavy backing from Hollywood and a steady stream of A-list endorsements, simply wasn't a strong candidate. Celebrity support can make noise, but it can't manufacture authentic excitement or trust when neither is there. Voters saw past the shine and noticed the gap between her polished persona and her actual performance. Maher's point is simple: you can't win elections on hype alone. At some point, the candidate has to be genuinely compelling, and Harris never quite got there.
How difficult, if difficult at all, has it been for you to deal with some of the things that have been thrown in your direction just because you were on your show telling the truth about what the left did wrong and how it got in its own way and what it needed to do to fix the party? Your thoughts?
You know, Stephen A., you can't have everything. That's what you come to if you live long enough. Would I like to have everybody on my side? Would I like to have everybody be my fan? Of course. Was it not great when some super woke people left because I wasn't on their page? Yeah, I wish everybody was still my fan. But you can't have that. Do I think I deserve a bunch of Emmys that I would never get because this town is woker than I am?
Maher often explains what it's like when his own side starts throwing stones at him simply for daring to criticize them, and it's genuinely interesting. He doesn't pretend the backlash doesn't bother him. He admits it hurts, especially when it comes from people who claim to be on his team. But Maher also acknowledges a deeper truth that many avoid. We all crave universal approval, this fantasy that everyone should automatically support whatever we say. But that's not how the real world works. People think for themselves, form their own opinions, and won't always agree with us. Maher accepts that reality, and he refuses to stay quiet just to blend in.
I would take 1,000,000 times, if you offered it to me, against those things, the joy of being able to speak my mind as I see it, and the love that gets me from people, from all stripes, who appreciate that. The things that people say to me, I've been out with every type of celebrity. They don't say the things they say to me to other celebrities. That means more to me than anything. But things that people say to me and how much it means to them that they feel like there's somebody out there who is never pulling a punch and who will just call out anybody wherever they are in the political spectrum.
And that's exactly what people respect about March. He doesn't pander, tiptoe, or reshape his views just to keep a certain crowd satisfied. He calls out anyone he thinks is wrong, regardless of their politics or status. In a media world crowded with talk show hosts and comedians who only take shots at the other side, Maher stands out as a true exception. Most entertainers play it safe, shielding their own camp while pretending to be bold. But Maher is a different breed. Willing to challenge his own audience, push back against his own tribe's narratives, and take criticism from people who once applauded him. That independent streak is what keeps him relevant and respected.
I'm a free speech guy. I believe not in absolute free speech. That's not even in the Constitution. And of course, we have the example of, yelling fire in a crowded theater and so forth. There are things that you can't do. But I think he's basically right. We've gone way too far toward whose facts? I mean, COVID was a perfect example of this. And I think that's something that really opened a lot of people's eyes to what's going on with censorship in this country. We were not allowed to really discuss this. And it was a new phenomenon, this new pathogen we had. It should have been discussed. We're finding out now, as each week rolls by, more and more, it's pretty obvious that COVID, the origin of it was the lab.
Maher was asked what he thought about Mark Zuckerberg's decision not to fact-check every post on Meta platforms, and he praised it as a bold, necessary move. At a time when tech companies face constant pressure to act as moral referees for the entire internet, Maher sees Zuckerberg's position as a pushback against the growing demand for censorship disguised as safety. Maher has long been a consistent, unapologetic defender of free speech, a principle he views as fundamental to the Constitution. To him, freedom of expression isn't optional, it's essential to a healthy democracy. He maintains that the best way to counter bad speech is with better speech, stronger arguments, clearer logic, and open debate, not digital muzzle orders. Silencing people doesn't change their beliefs, it just drives those beliefs underground, where they spread unchecked. Maher argues that sunlight, not suppression, exposes bad ideas for what they are. In his view, free societies thrive when all voices are allowed to be heard, not when a select group decides which opinions may exist.
I think in 50 years, when people look back, they'll say, wait a second, there was a lab in Wuhan where the disease started that was studying this disease and using gain-of-function research on it, and they were debating whether this was the cause of it. Now, it could have been the wet markets. Absolutely. We don't know for sure. But the fact that we weren't even allowed to discuss that it was coming from a lab, which again, it probably was now, we know, that should tell you all you need to know. The fact that Justin Trudeau just stepped down in Canada, I mean, this guy had a very high approval rating 5 years ago, and he left really very unpopular because Canada became that kind of place where you really did not have the kind of free speech we do, and many other countries in Europe.
And that the real risk Maher sees in clamping down on free speech, when open discussion is stifled, truth is often the first casualty. Think back to the early months of COVID. Had people been allowed to openly debate the virus origins on social media without being dismissed as conspiracy theorists, or having their posts removed, important questions might have been explored far sooner. Instead, one explanation was heavily protected while alternative viewpoints were pushed aside. Only later did many acknowledge that the lab leak theory wasn't necessarily misinformation, but a possibility that merited serious, transparent examination. Censorship doesn't just block harmful ideas. It can also bury facts, evidence, and inconvenient realities. When certain conversations are declared off-limits, society doesn't become safer, just less informed. Silencing people risks hiding the truth rather than revealing it. Healthy democracies rely on open debate, skepticism, and the freedom to question official narratives. Once those rights are restricted, mistakes go unchallenged, authorities go unchecked, and truth becomes whatever the loudest or most powerful voice decides it is.
This is part of what Mark Zuckerberg was talking about. We don't want to become like these countries in Europe where they have rules about what you can say that's going to be censored simply because it's hurting somebody's feelings. You know, you can't say something about Islam because it's Islamophobia. But what if it's true? You know, we just had a terrible incident in New Orleans that was a jihadist attack. We want to be able to speak about that plainly and honestly without worrying somebody's going to say, don't say that because it's not all Muslims. Well, no one's saying it's all Muslims. We're saying we need to discuss about this honestly and openly and patently, and you can't do that if somebody's looking over your shoulder and saying, well, this is going to hurt somebody's feelings.
Free speech doesn't exist to protect anyone's feelings, it exists to protect the truth. That an uncomfortable reality many still resist. Across Europe, and increasingly in the US, certain topics have effectively become cultural taboos. Some institutions, political groups, and influential organizations have been placed beyond criticism, where even mild pushback can lead to labeling, backlash, or attempts to silence the speaker. Simply mentioning or questioning them can trigger instant smears. But treating these institutions as untouchable doesn't make underlying issues disappear. Many hold significant influence over politics, culture, media, and public discourse, shaping society in ways most people never explicitly agreed to, yet few are willing to discuss it openly. Fear has replaced honesty, and silence has replaced critical thinking. This is precisely why free speech matters. It gives people the ability to question power, challenge prevailing narratives, and shed light on actions that affect everyone. When certain groups are shielded from scrutiny, society grows weaker, not stronger. Truth survives through open dialogue, not hushed conversations behind closed doors.
But that doesn't mean I'm going to hold my tongue about what I think is wrong about the left. And I don't. And there's a lot. And old school liberal, I could give you so many examples. It's a very big part of the show where I'm talking about the fact that people somehow think that wokeness is an extension of liberalism, when very often it's the opposite of liberalism. I mean, just like the Israel situation, the liberal position has always been a two-state solution. I still think that's the solution. Well, that's not the position of the woke. They want from the river to the sea. So you can have that position, but don't tell me that's the liberal position.
Maher then launches into a full-on critique, drawing a sharp line between what he calls the woke crowd and traditional liberals. In his view, the two aren't just different, they're fundamentally opposed. Classic liberalism emphasized open debate, individual freedom, tolerance, and the testing of ideas. The woke movement, he argues, has shifted toward purity tests, moral policing, and constant outrage. Maher contends that this new mindset has drifted far from genuine liberal principles and, if left unchecked, could pull the country in a harmful direction. The fixation on identity conflicts, the intolerance of dissent, and the push to regulate language and thought. Maher sees all of this as a formula for national decline. To him, it's not merely frustrating or misguided, it's potentially dangerous. He argues that this trend needs to be challenged before it becomes the dominant cultural norm. In his view, when activism morphs into authoritarianism and progress turns into strict policing, The outcome isn't justice, it's societal breakdown.
Well, first of all, my job is to cross the line. That's what a
Okay.
stand-up comedian's job. Not all stand-up, not all no comedy. Some comedy's just silly, but not mine. So, you know, how do you know where the line is until people like me cross it to a degree? I'm never upset when people in the audience recoil. You know, I don't want to make the whole show recoiling. You want to be popular. But there's a couple of times in the show where people just are like, ugh. You know, I mean, we were just talking about the Israel situation. There's a line in there where I say, you know, really? Marching for Hamas? You're marching for terrorist groups? It's like rooting for the planes on 9/11.
What makes Bill Maher compelling is his consistent willingness to speak his mind, even when it risks offending people. He doesn't pander to audiences, celebrities, or his own political allies, and he holds everyone, including himself, to the same standard. Whether he criticizing President Trump based on actual actions rather than speculation, defending free speech, or calling out what he sees as excesses within the woke movement, Maher routinely chooses honesty over popularity. He believes that shutting down debate doesn't solve anything, it only hides the truth. He also points to the dangers of allowing unchecked power or ideological extremism to shape public conversation, whether through social media, politics, or cultural pressure. Maher's independence, bluntness, and clarity make him a unique voice in today's polarized climate. Love him or hate him, Maher pushes people to confront uncomfortable realities, question their assumptions, and engage with ideas on substance instead of spectacle. In a world crowded with noise, his voice cuts through with unmistakable clarity.